Hedvig wants a proper OG Because Language intro.
There we go.
We will shut up.
Okay.
Which would not actually make it
go.
OG.
We can hold hands while we shut up. It will help us shut up.
Hello and welcome to this very special bonus edition of Because Language, a show about linguistics, science of language. I'm Daniel Midgley, and here's the team. It's Hedvig Hirgard, sitting right next to me,
Yes? Hello?
and the always present Ben Ainsley.
Hello. I'm going to look at this camera. That's what I've decided. Is
Yep.
that what you intended?
It's, I can choose.
We get to do cool newsreader things. And in other news, we're going to...
It's gonna be... This is Daniel's self-chosen job.
Yes, it is.
So,
All right.
we can do that.
So now we get to do the calm, chill bit where we basically go, this is going to be a really unusual episode.
This is the first time that this weekend has been the first time we've all been in the same place, even though we've been doing shows since, Ben, 2011.
2011, yeah.
Hedvig, our first show with you was in 2016, and then you were a guest, and then not for a year, and then again in 2017 a few more times, and then just
Fair
like
enough,
all the
yeah.
time.
That sounds reasonable.
And one thing I want to do today is talk, I guess, about who were you when we first started doing this, and who are you now? And what was the world when we started doing this, and what is the world now?
Oh.
And what is linguistics and language?
Oh my god, you just broke so many journalism rules, Daniel. You asked like 4 questions,
Well-
all of which were super broad.
I'm not a journalist, and this is the broad overview.
Okay.
Anyway, Hedvig, it's been really wonderful having you here for the weekend. We're sitting on my deck. We're enjoying the birds. We're enjoying the magnolias. We're enjoying the sounds of nature.
Mm-hmm. And coffee.
And
And most importantly, caffeine. This is going to be really fun. I think we should probably tell people, like, in a sense, maybe either buckle up or, if this is not going to be your thing, maybe just skip this episode because this is not going to look like a normal Because Language episode. This is us kind of shooting the shit a little bit.
It's not going to be so linguistic-y meaty is what I think
Yeah.
Ben is trying to say.
That is what I'm trying to say.
But
there.
as anyone who's listened to a podcast for a long time knows, it is...
We always get back there.
No, but like any podcast, it is fun to go to a video and look up what the podcasters look like when they make the sounds that you hear in your ear. Like, I recently looked up some people that I've been listening to for a long time, and like, they don't look like I expected, and when they move their mouth, the sound still comes out, and it's like spooky.
it's coming out of a human, but it's not the human.
and
I
it's not the
expected.
human. I'd seen them on still pictures before, and I was like, okay, yeah, maybe. And then I saw them in a video, and I was like, nope.
Wrong. Incorrect.
Wrong.
So hopefully you're all experiencing that cognitive dissonance now. You're
Yeah.
seeing our weird faces in motion and just being like, don't care for this at all.
We do videos,
We haven't... so my
Yeah.
students, who are incredibly YouTube focused, because they're boys, looked me up. It goes in a cycle in my profession, right? Every 2 to 3 years, the knowledge that I do a podcast goes away, and then there's a fresh awakening as students are like, you have a podcast? And I have to kind of be like, it's cool, it's not a big deal, it's certainly not a surprise, it's not a secret I hold, blah blah blah. And then they immediately go, oh, where can we find you? So I tell them all the things that you've probably heard, listeners, many times, because we say it every show. But every time they're like, what about YouTube? Which is arguably, I think, our least probably activated and time and effort put into channel of all of the channels where we actually have a presence.
It might be Facebook now.
Yeah. And so they go there and they're always just sort of like, oh. there's always almost a commiseration on their, oh, you only have this many likes and this many. I'm like, I don't need your approval, child. This is not why I do this. But I think all of that was a long-winded way of saying, I think this is a really good opportunity to put this on YouTube and have it as a kind of like a placeholder video of, hey, even though counterintuitively this is not going to be representative of the kind of episodes that we do.
So does that mean that we need to do why don't we, I have a suggestion.
Okay.
We do a round of what we think a show is.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
What it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should I start because I'm the youngest? And then there'll be...
All right. And then me.
Hedvig is the youngest, everyone, in case that wasn't clear.
I am the youngest. Also, in terms of years on the show.
I see.
true.
And in terms of...
Tenure, yes.
And in terms of years.
Seniority.
I think...
It's just,
We're
I
really close.
make that joke, everyone listening, because we sometimes tease Hedvig about desperately wanting to hold on to Gen Z-ness.
I just think they're really cool. And I want them to accept me as part of them.
I think I agree with...
They're very cool.
I think you have picked a good order in which to do this. I concur with
Okay.
your...
Okay. All
Good.
right.
What is this show?
Okay. I think because Language is a show that comes out regularly, that is a bit of the longer one in your podcast feed. So it'll be like 40 minutes, an hour.
An hour 30.
An hour 30. In my brain, I'm like,
Consistently.
Okay. Aren't there some that are shorter?
No, they're really
No,
aren't.
okay, all right. I'm wrong. It's a bit of a longer one, and it has different segments in it, and it's about language and linguistics from a scientific perspective, and it's not about specific languages, but about language as a phenomena in the brain and in culture. And we do a newsy segment, which actually is one of my favorite segments, because I think there are fun new research and news going on in language and linguistics, and I like that segment. And then we do a sort of main segment, which is an interview with someone who's done something interesting, either written a book or written a research paper or done something else interesting. And that's like the main theme chunk of the show. And then we do an end bit where we do Word of the Week, which is an opportunity for me in particular to just talk about whatever I want a bit.
That's what it is.
New linguistic phenomena is what we would probably try and call that section. I think.
Yes. It's supposed to be ones that have been in the news lately, but sometimes it's just ones that like I think about.
There's new, and then there's new to Hedvig.
Yes. And the show tries to be accessible to people who haven't done linguistics in school or at uni, but are interested in language. So we try to break down concepts. We try.
I mean, that's part of it sometimes.
Yeah.
That's sort of where I come in. Like, I can take over the explanation from
Yeah.
this point, I suppose.
Yeah. And what I like about it, there are a lot of linguistics shows and YouTube channels and things. And, everyone has a niche. And I think our niche is the newsy and the sort of almost like journalistic covering of linguistics, so to speak.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that.
Yeah.
As the second longest running member of, I almost said Talk the Talk,
the
because language.
That's $1 in the talk jar.
Oh no! So many dollars in that jar. I've always seen my job as the sort of the everyman or every woman. But having said that, I think my job is like our audience is a very clever audience, right? So I'm always very reticent to sort of go too broad in my every person role. Like I think our audience are really clever cookies generally.
They're very clever. But sometimes they don't know jargon, which is perfectly
totally.
normal.
Yeah, and so that's what I mean. So things like, what does that piece of jargon mean, definitely fall within my thing. But I've never seen my job as, let's make this as simple as humanly possible. That isn't really what I don't think that's what people who listen to our show really look for or want or anything like that. There's other shows like that, and they do great work, and I think they are free to go and do that. But that's not really what we're about. We're three relatively clever, educated people with huge blind spots. I saw that, Grimace. You're right. They're like clever in very specific ways. And yeah, I think we bring the one thing in your explanation that I think probably hasn't been touched on is that we come from a very definitive perspective in our show. Like we are unashamed in some of our positions and stances and that sort of thing. I know it's kind of gauche to use the word woke these days, but we certainly try and stay as educated on and abreast of sort of political, social, and justice-oriented issues. Having said that, we're three white people, so we don't. We definitely aren't on like the cutting edge of that. But I think we try very hard as three white people to be the least three white people-y type of podcast we can be.
Well, I don't know if we try very hard. We just try to cover language and cultural linguistics as fairly as possible.
Yeah.
I think,
yeah.
I'm not even sure. I think sometimes people make it sound like it's harder than it is. Just like being a nice, kind person is not super effortful.
I find it is. Maybe
Oh.
I'm just an asshole. I don't know. I find it's really, really tricky
Okay.
to constantly... I get what you're... I definitely get where you're sort of going there direction-wise, which is just like, don't be a douche isn't a particularly hard mission
It's
statement.
a quite a low bar.
yeah, you're absolutely right. But if we engage in like therapy chat for a second, right? Like your Johari window and your unknown unknowns, can be really, really tricky to try and get a handle on. And I think we make a bit of effort to try and stay on top of our unknown unknowns.
I feel like we're trying to make a better world through language, but in other ways, if we can.
Yeah, we range.
Somebody's-
It starts linguistic, and then we'll often just be talking about all sorts of random.
Somebody was, I was giving a presentation and I was talking about language change and getting okay with language change. And she said, my language is Cornish. And I'm
As
not,
in actual Cornish?
yeah, like she was a Cornish
Whoa.
actress.
It's a Celtic language.
Yeah. And she said, I'm not okay with certain kinds of language change. Like my language disappearing, I'm not going to be blasé about that. And I said, okay, let me take a step back and then talk about what we're really about. I talk about getting okay with language change because I think that will help reduce discrimination and make a better world. But the real aim is to make a better world. And if that means keeping Cornish, then that's good too. That's a good goal. So the real mission is make a good world.
Usually also when we talk about language change, we talk about within one language. So like English speakers getting okay with the fact that like young people are not going to speak exactly like they did.
Or that different varieties of that language have just as much relevance or standing. And
Right,
that sort of thing.
exactly. I actually not even sure I would call language endangerment, like that historical process, language change.
Yeah, I don't.
Like, but I understand that someone who's not in linguistics would, because it is changing.
Yeah.
But in that facet, maybe also there's a discussion to be had about like, there may be going to be young people who speak Cornish who want to use new words that older Cornish speakers don't want to use.
I think it isn't helped by the fact that there's bad actors in those conversations who will deliberately try and create a narrative that is, English is dying, English is under threat, and all that sort of just nonsensical stuff. Now, some people make that argument in good faith, but because they're just not very smart, right? Because they don't really understand what
They just
language
don't do
is,
this all day,
right?
yeah.
And then there's other people who are making those arguments absolutely in bad faith, who are trying to engender this story of the primacy of like white English culture being under threat, which is just
Also,
patently
even
false.
if it is, like, good riddance, like, fine. Like, I don't care. I use English as a means of communicating with people.
Even at that level, I'm going to push back on that just a little bit, because even at that level, that I feel like gives power to the people that says that narrative exists, and I don't think it does. Right? The narrative is false. Right?
Yeah. No, it's factually false.
And so when people like, I agree with you. If it were to be true, I'd still be like, ding dong, the witch is dead. Like it would be fine. But I don't even want to give bad faith sort of arguers even that much. Where I'm like, no,
Okay, fair enough.
incorrect. You were wrong.
It is very incorrect.
So, we've now given our listeners, or people new to the podcast, a very good idea of exactly what happens, which is we just ramble.
Yeah,
we haven't,
I try to bring
we
it back.
haven't even gotten to Daniel's explanation of the show yet.
Daniel?
What do we do on...
No, I like your explanation. I think the one thing that sets us apart is the news. There's also something else that I've become aware of in the programming and in doing editing YouTube for hours and hours and hours and hours. And that is that many shows are about a thing, and they are going to try to leave it all on the field. We have now said everything that we need to say about thing, and we don't do that. We do a bit, and then maybe we'll come back to it in the next episode or down the road a bit.
True.
And it's almost like where we are is part of the story. Is like our understanding, because my understanding grows about a thing, and I never say all there is to say about a thing.
You can go back literally hundreds of episodes into our back catalogue, back when we were called like a different podcast, but essentially did still very much the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing.
And you can see really significant shifts and changes in our thinking on things.
Ooh, what's changed? What's changed?
Like I remember one of my favorite things that I ever learned on this podcast was the idea that the phonemes that we use in different languages, right? And so for people listening who might be completely new to the show, phonemes are things like ch, ka, la, like just the different little bits of sounds that we can make with our mouths. The phonemes that we use, broadly speaking, map to where in the human migration out of Africa a particular culture is, right? So, which is to say, African peoples, who are the furthest back along that pathway, have the most rich and complex phonemic inventories, right? So this is where we will get interesting click sounds and that sort of thing. But see, Hedvig's shaking her head because we know that this isn't the thing anymore.
This turned out to be wrong.
At the time, we could look at sort of Polynesians who have far fewer just like letters in their alphabet because there's far less phonemes in their language. And we're like, oh, well, the Polynesians were like way out on the edge of the human expansion sort of like migratory wave. And so they have less phonemes in their language. And then Africans, who are way back in the other direction, have heaps and heaps of phonemes. But as cool as it sounds and as intuitive feeling as it is, it's just not a thing.
Well.
Okay.
So,
what is the story, Hedvig?
There's a general theory in evolutionary sciences in general. Biology, ecology, linguistics, all of them, anthropology, anyone who takes an evolutionary stance on their study object, that if you want to know the origin of something that's spread out, be that sparrows or a certain bird or something, then you're likely to find the most diversity at the origin.
Yep.
Founder effect. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's really the founder effect. And then less diversity as you go out. So, so that and that works for language in some ways. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of language families will have a greater, not more words, but more different words at the center.
Yeah.
And less different words at the periphery. But not more words. Does that make sense?
Yes.
They're more different from each other.
Correct.
I said several times, I'm sorry, I'm babying you.
No, it's okay.
And there was the theory, and I think the paper you're referring to is by someone who I collaborate with.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I need to, and I don't...
Are we about to do a giant shit on their work? Is that what's happening?
No,
Okay.
I actually am not going to do that, because I don't think that's necessary. But I also don't remember the nuances of their claim.
Right.
But I do think that maybe it had to do with diversity at the center. And when we talk about that also, it's not like the other interpretation that could come from what you said is that like people in Africa are like less evolved.
No.
Which is not the case.
No, it's as far as I'm concerned, from what I understood at the time, it would be the opposite of that interpretation, right? Which is that because people in Africa have had so much time and opportunity and intermingling. That
is where we want to go.
Yeah.
They've been in that place for a longer time.
And,
so different things have happened.
Stable cultures and societies.
And interacting with each other in that place. And that's a thing. But there was a sentence you said that could have sounded like, oh, we had a lot of words in the beginning, then people went out and got less, and then the people here just stagnated and kept that.
I think what I interpreted at the time was at the sort of nebulous kind of origin point of the out of Africa hypothesis, right? Yeah. We probably had like a kind of a set phonemic inventory to our language, relatively speaking, right? The pioneers, as it were, of that migratory frontier, right, who would later go on to end up being, say, Polynesians or the indigenous peoples of North and South America and that sort of thing, right? Like the leading edge of that wave of initial human migration out of Africa would have held onto and probably had less reason to sort of diversify and enrich their phonemic inventories because they weren't stable and staying in one place and constantly like coming up and finding that sort of frictional barrier as two peoples interact. And so because of that, their phonemic inventories stayed relatively similar to where they were in that initial phase of leaving sort of Africa. Whereas Africans and various sort of peoples of that region for, what are we thinking, like 100,000 years?
70,000 years?
200,
70,000.
100,000.
100.
100 out of Africa it's like 100,000.
So for 100,000 years, they have been living, farming, agricultural, staying, stasis. Empires have risen and fallen, right? Like, I couldn't even begin to scratch the surface of the complexity of human sort of evolution and civilization in Africa over 100,000 years.
Yeah.
But in that process, so many more phonemic expressions have arisen because of that sort of geographic stability and localization. That was what I understood it to be. But
Okay.
I also subsequently understood that apparently not a thing.
But also, new sounds in language don't come about just because of contact with other people. They come about for language internal reasons as well.
Okay.
So, me? I don't know. I need to reread this paper.
So this is really good because
Because-
I had thought that my favourite thing had been like kicked to the can, right?
No, I don't think it entirely is. I think there's definitely
Yes.
like the basic idea, more diversity at origin. I think most people are like, yeah. And then like specific phenomena, like language sounds, we know that they can come about through other means. So
Right.
they might not work so well for those. But I need to reread this paper before I make an ass of myself.
But to go to take it back, like maybe, I don't know, at this point, like 10 minutes in the conversation, you asked what have we changed on. That was only one very specific example. I think just broadly from an awareness perspective, from a justice perspective, from a social perspective, like you and I, in particular, Daniel, because we've been doing it for like 13 years, are very different human beings than when we started, right? Like I started on this show when I was 24. I don't know if anyone's ever met a 24-year-old before, but they're really stupid creatures, especially white male 24-year-olds.
They're assholes.
Just not done yet.
You were
Not done yet.
You were a kid. You were
Let's-
running around. You were appearing in the social pages of the West Australian. There's a photo of you.
Why would you bring
There's a photo of you. I gotta find it. I got a photo of that thing.
No. Was this at the
27-year-old Danny.
Laneway Festival where I'm dressed in like my little knickerbocker shorts and stuff?
Yeah, I think it is. That's going. We'll have a link on our episode page for this.
Orphan. Hello.
There's another child. There's a child. The same child.
So yes, my kids are running around inside the house. Yeah, you were a very different person, and you kind of acquired this cranky personality, but you kind of lost the cranky person. Well, I mean,
I did have a divorce in that time. Like, things happen. And that's the other thing about our show, because it's been going on such a longitudinal sort of time frame. You know, like I've had, you and I both have had kids. I mean, you'd already had kids, but you had more kids.
Yep.
I saw a relationship end. I started new relationships. I've changed jobs and I've changed careers in that time. All of this stuff has happened whilst the show's been happening. And I think that by necessity means that you and I have certainly changed a whole bunch. And then on a slightly lesser significant timescale, because I think speak to it. Were you already mostly on the pathway you were now on by the time you joined the show?
I have this sort of cognitive failure, which is that all throughout my life, I have just thought that I am the same. And I don't think that's true. Like, ever since I was about 15, 16, if, like, you ask me naively, like, am I the same person I was at 15? I'm like, nah, more or less. Nah. It's not really not true.
It can't be true, surely.
It's probably not true, but it's very hard for me to...
That would either make you one of two
Say.
things, right? You are the most ridiculously immature year-old person in the world, or you are like the most biblically mature 15-year-old the world has ever seen.
Well, it's probably not true, but it's hard for me to introspect and see what that is.
maybe you just don't feel like you've changed in ways that matter, sort of like many Chomskyans feel like language doesn't change in ways that matter.
Maybe.
Or bring it back to the linguistics, Daniel. Good job.
But I also have this other cognitive blind spot, which is I think that whatever I'm doing and saying is like the default normal, most plausible thing that anyone would do.
Isn't that inherently the psychological fallacy that all humans struggle to overcome?
Which is really hard because so when people say something like, "Oh, I really like you," I'm like, I am default.
I'm just person.
I am person. What are you liking? Like, I don't get it.
So almost sort of
Like, why would anyone?
Why
do
would anyone like a blob of clay? Like I'm just yeah right.
Like the things I do are the things you would do. Meh. But it's not true because then also some people do things that I would do and I'm like very confused. And then I'm like, oh yeah, different people. Oh, okay. that maybe mean that I'm a different person too. So I struggle with, I know that one thing that has happened since I sort of turned 30 is that I have decided that don't need to optimize things as much.
Okay.
I used to want everything to be the optimal version, but sometimes there's like amount of effort spent, amount of improvement. There's a plateau.
Diminishing returns kind of
Yeah,
situation.
I've become better at recognizing. So I'm like, this isn't the best conference I've ever organized, but it's good enough and it's going to be fine. That's my main thing.
Okay.
That happened to me. Were
you already, I guess my question was a little bit more geared towards like, when you joined the show, you were like, yep, definitely want to be a linguistic academic. That's my path that I'm on. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to pursue.
No, I was like, I want to see what it's like to do a PhD. I've always thought that I'll be in academia for as long as it's good for me. And when it is no longer good for me, I hope I have the courage to leave.
Ooh, what's the parachute?
I don't know.
I want to know. Like, surely you've thought about it. If
Can't
you've
tell you.
thought about the idea that like there is going to be an end point when it doesn't work for you, what alternatives exist for Hedvig?
Unfortunately, the alternatives that exist are also kind of precarious labour markets, like journalism or teaching, which is where I think most academics would have their out.
When you say teaching, do you mean not my sort of teaching, but like at an academic level?
No. I've taught
You
at
find-
primary school.
Like-
You
English.
find primary and secondary teaching to be a precarious labour market?
Maybe not precarious. In Sweden, it's been not great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I'm so spoiled as an Australian
Maybe-
teacher, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it is less precarious than I think, but
Come teach with us.
maybe not precarious, but like people are very hard work for not very much money.
I see. Yes, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's because the classic thing with teaching pretty much the world over that I've sort of observed is that your job security is very good, but your remuneration, maybe not so much.
Yeah. But,
Just quickly, should be remuneration. I
Many
only
people feel-
learned this recently,
many
and
people
it
feel like
does my head in.
Many people feel like it's remuneration because number. right?
Yes.
Yeah.
it should be. We've decided it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also,
Everybody.
compensation.
Oh yeah. Okay. I could do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's that?
As in a stand-in for remuneration.
Compensation.
Compensation.
Yeah. So, I'm same as I've always been. The one you've met.
Very good.
It's
Very
the same
good.
as you tell me. I mean, for all I know. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I'm laughing at you, but my experience of having like 3-hourly chats with you once a week to fortnight for the last like 5 years actually hold up your hypothesis most completely. I don't.
I can't
detect
really
any significant
disagree.
Changes.
The only change is that one, because when I came into my PhD, I was in a PhD project with like some other people, and I was like, okay, I'm getting stressed that this isn't organized the way I would like it, and I tried to organize it, and then someone took me aside and was like, Hedvig, it's fine, just focus on yourself, it'll all be fine.
Chill, bro.
Chill. And I had to be told that now, and I don't need to be told that as often now.
Fair enough.
All right.
As often.
When I started doing Talk the Talk, and it started becoming an hour-long show, and it started, ramp.
Should we explain briefly like what the show was and how it started?
So 2009, I started doing a 7-minute segment on RTR-FM, or a community radio station. I would go in every
7.
Tuesday morning.
7.
Yes. Yeah, you heard right, folks. This little behemoth started as a 7-minute.
It was really just whoever, and you got whoever was doing the thing.
It was a linguistic chicken McNugget.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, let's have a thing, and so then it got to take up more time. We let it run. It got to be a 25-minute thing, and then Peter Barr, the station manager, said, "Would you like it to be an hour thing?" And so it was, and that was when I made the shift to pre-record so I could have more control. I was a maniac in those days. I was doing a show. How was I doing a show every week, like with interviews and stuff and recordings and feedback from? And I had a full-time academic job on top of that.
job.
And
The only thing I can say is you didn't have small children.
I didn't have small, but then I did.
Yeah.
And my dear partner just took a lot of that, and that must have been hard. And so she's really the hero of the show as far as I'm concerned.
That's true for my partner as well, actually.
Yeah. But now I find that I just I'm doing a lot less. It feels like we keep putting out episodes, and I don't know if it's ever going to take over the world, but I'm okay with just they're my publications. I feel like episodes are publications for us, or we need to start thinking of it that way.
Oh, can we get DOIs?
That would be cool.
Digital
DOIs?
Object Identifier. It's like what...
Like a stable URL.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I know what you mean. Like what you tag like certain documents and stuff with.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that I'm doing is I'm doing shows on the Australia. It's kind of come back to where it began on the ABC, the Australian ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, where I go in. I do a show on Adelaide on Wednesday afternoon. I phoned in a show to Adelaide for like 15, 20 minutes, and then another 15, 20 minute thing every Thursday morning. It's a whole
Here in
different
Perth.
audience here in Perth. Whole different audience.
Yeah, so listeners, if you remember earlier in this episode where I talked about how like I don't want to try and dumb it down too much, forget all that.
Yeah.
that is what Daniel has to do.
Because
on
I
the
do,
shows.
I don't have to confront things about, like, getting cranky about language change or why do we have to accept languages besides English?
But Daniel, why don't they come to this country and learn our language? Stuff like that.
Why do they call it British English? Why don't they just call it English? That kind of thing. The way the Queen talks sounds so lovely.
I would put it to people that it actually didn't sounded weird and archaic and stilted and kind of non-relevant.
It sounded good coming out of Olivia Colman. The Crown. She played.
Oh yeah.
So there's two different audiences, and I sort of see the divide between the Because Language audience and the ABC audiences. And now I'm doing something new. I'm teaching a lot on the, what do I call it? Where there's a group of people, mostly older, who want to get together and hear a lecture by someone.
Like a open universities type thing.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
And so I do that like sometimes one a week. I'm just going to a place and just doing a lecture, doing a thing for people usually older, maybe 50, 60 plus. And
retired and semi-retired.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And sometimes I think, this is really different. Is this where I want to have influence? This seems like a good place to have influence. Is it really? And then what'll happen is that older folks will come up.
Do they change their minds?
I see it happening. I see it happening for some. Like, not everybody. Like, after one,
yeah.
At the end of one, I said, hey, we have to stop, but I'll stick around for questions for a bit if you want. And an older gentleman said a little too loudly, don't bother.
Wow.
I guess
hecklers in
I love
the
it.
audience.
It means I'm getting people angry. But afterwards, people come up to me and they're like, what's this about singular they or non-binary language? And I'm realizing these people have trans or non-binary grandkids.
Yeah, it's a thing for sure.
They're struggling to understand. And
But
so
that's nice that they're trying.
That's I was about to say.
They're going there to learn about it and to be like, oh, maybe this is something I need to learn about. And like, it's hard.
What about this? And then I can be there and I can say, yeah, that's totally a thing, and we know about this, and here's how you can help. And it really, I feel like I'm in a good place right now with the show, talking to you two, which fills in a certain place, and then talking to other people and doing lectures, which it's very different from what I used to do, but I'm really glad that I'm doing it. I feel pretty happy with it.
I like the idea, excuse me, what you've described, I think I've mentioned it on the show before, there's a new show out called like Moonhaven, which is, it's not the most amazing thing in the world.
It's a TV show.
It is a TV show.
It's a drama.
It is.
It's on Netflix, HBO.
I
something.
think that it
Pirate
is
Bay.
on, you know how we're in this like really annoying period of decentralization of production? I think it's on AMC Plus, which is, another way to say that is, get it how you want to get it.
Moonhaven.
Moonhaven. It posits this sort of utopia that has grown up on the moon over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
Right? And so now in my head, it's just become a sort of a... What's the word I'm looking for?
Placeholder.
Yes, thank you. It's become a placeholder for an idea of like what we need to do to fix the stuff. right? And so what Daniel's talking about, which is almost a kind of anarchistic, in the true sense of the word, localized approach to educating and to change and to culture change and linguistic change and that sort of thing, is kind of the way of the future, I think, right? Is we need people like you who know stuff on a localized level to just sit with people and be like, what up? Here's what these things mean, and these things mean, and these things mean. And you're not going to convince everyone, but the people who are open and are looking for answers and for help sort of like navigating this new frontier, which is, you know, to their perception certainly, just resplendent with rocks to like sort of ground your craft on, kind of go, oh, great, someone who can help me sort of navigate these waters. That's really helpful. And
I have to say as well, I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. You are not young white man.
Mm. I'm someone that they will listen to.
Yeah, which means that when you say like, it's okay, let's talk about this, they're going to be like, oh, nice.
The white man said so.
No, but honestly, like, it helps, right?
I'm saying it in a joking way, but I mean it.
It's like, you know, I used to not get this too. And let me tell you what helped me.
Right.
Like I could be an interpreter. They will listen to.
Yeah, this is the thing we also come across often in the show, which is like, well, maybe all things considered, that's okay. But I wish it wasn't exactly like that.
Well, the trick is you pass the mic. When you have the authority, you pass the mic. You highlight
but are you
words.
able to, in these speakeasies and things, to be like, and here's a young Noongar woman who would like to talk to you about you learning their language.
It's harder. It's easy, and then what you do is you point them to Because Language, where we are able to do that more fully, I think.
Right. Yeah.
You're right. It's hard in that space.
It is tricky, but yeah, it's hard. But the other thing is teaching young people, like if we could, because
I guess we got it covered, huh?
Were young people at one point.
I've got the old people, you've got the young people.
And they went to school, and they had a primary school teacher, maybe, who, if I can guess, said, you have to speak like this, otherwise you are bad.
Mrs. Terwilliger was like, your verbs are always these, and you know...
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
and you can't say, this ain't that, you have to say, this isn't that, or whatever it is. Like, they were told there was wrong and right, and they were graded, and they handed in things, and they got good or bad grades, and that's how they were taught. And when you go to primary school nowadays, some of that is still there, and I don't know, I've talked to some Swedish teachers and who talk about like trying to talk to their kids about language appropriateness instead of correctness.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's an appropriate style that maybe you need to employ in work interviews, but that doesn't mean it's the best thing.
Yeah.
This was something that I wanted to talk about that's changed over the show, because I think when we started talking about stuff, your view, and I was willing to go along, was that code switching. We need to help students to be good code switchers and talk about appropriateness.
Mm-hmm. But you've become subsequently far more radical.
I have become radicalized. I'm like, I'm not going to teach students appropriateness so that they can dodge discrimination for somebody else to cop it. I think I want to focus, other people can work on that. I want to focus on ending discrimination and working that way. And I know that's...
We've touched on this in a few different realms, a few different times, right?
It's our consistent theme. Most consistent theme, yeah.
Where we keep coming back to, not just on a linguistic front, but the idea of, do you help people navigate a system, or do you dismantle the system?
Do you dismantle the system? And I can't dismantle the system, and I won't. And maybe there will be some aspect of navigation that needs to happen, but...
Because you're not the one...
Who cops it.
Who cops it, right?
Not at all.
So
and I'm aware of that. I'm still going to fight discrimination as much as I can, because I'm convinced that helping people navigate is a red herring. Because it's not about language. If they don't get them on language, even if they could speak perfectly and ape the standardized variety, they'll get them on something else.
Yeah,
because it's not about language. Never was about language.
And it's a moving target. They'll be like, oh, you learned the variety we said we liked 2 years ago. Changed it. Now we like something else.
It's APA 8th.
Yeah. So So I have little patience for the code switching approach.
But it is like, you are not the one who cops it. Like someone is copying it.
Yeah.
And
so
that's not a good time.
My needle thread on that one is to acknowledge to my students, who are often teenagers, the unfairness and the in a lot of ways kind of pointlessness and stupidity of the system, right? To say to them, the fact that this is regarded as good, proper, higher value, higher order, all of these things is absurd, and we shouldn't. And I don't want you to think that. However, in the system that we operate in, you will be afforded some measure of preference if you are able to do these things. Yeah. So, like, to put it really bluntly, like, these are the white man's tools. If you would like to know how to use them, I will teach you, but I will remind you the whole way that they are the white man's tools and they kind of suck. But what you do with those tools is entirely your call because you're autonomous.
Teach that there is a standard, but also teach that the fact that the standard is inseparable from considerations of power and prestige.
Do you think that they get that? Or when you say that, a very nuanced explanation, do they just hear, Ben's saying a bunch of fancy words and he wants me to learn this?
In much the same way that Daniel's community sort of lectures and lessons will have a certain kind of hit rate or success rate. And also on top of that, it's really hard to know really inherently what your success rate or your hit rate is. I get the very distinct impression some people get it in the sense that the sort of the message that I'm communicating lands relatively unchanged. Some people are more or less disinterested because they're going, I just want tools. I don't care. Like, your waffling nonsense is not important to me, which is completely fair. That's their call. And then I think we always have to account for the fact that some people will be interpreting the message that I am delivering completely differently from any kind of intent that I actually have, right? So they might walk away from it going, that guy's a jackass and he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. This is not the world I live in. And all of his, like, cool woke guy approaches actually don't mean anything to me or help me at all, and maybe I either dislike him, disregard him, whatever it happens to be, and that's also completely understandable and fair because it's, as you were saying to Daniel, it's I don't really inherently have skin in the game. Right? What I do because of a kind of moral imperative, but not, unfortunately, because of an actual necessity, which is not true. You know, most people don't get to take their skin colour off. Well, not most people. No people get to take their skin colour off.
Yeah. I forget some of these things because I have chosen an industry like academia, and specifically humanities and linguistics is very open to, like, making fun of or not adhering to some of these rules. And especially linguists who do field work. So, for example, I have... Oh, my God. Yeah. Well. And then sometimes they'll be like, no, I have very particular opinions about the Oxford Common. It's like, oh, you do? Okay. Well,
that's an interesting hill to die on, but fair enough.
That. But usually it's like, when you write academics papers for journals, we want you to sort of do this stuff. Okay. Everything else, yeah. And also, this comes with the culture of, like, dress code and, like, how you address superiors and everything. So, is
that field specific or country specific?
I think it's field specific. I think it's similar, for example, in biology.
Right, so a biologist in Germany, China, and America are likely to have a fairly similar culture academically.
Like, physicists in all those countries, as far as I know, have a sort of standard uniform, which is like a t-shirt with a funny, like, quantum mechanics joke and, like, cargo shorts.
Right.
And they all...
There's very little variation.
Yeah, we look like this. And linguists who do fieldwork, like, have some sort of clothing from the place they do fieldwork. So if you work in the Pacific, you have, like, Hawaiian, like, cool shirts. Like, I bought one now at Tahiti, very nice.
Cool.
And I can wear this as a formal wear to my office every day, and no one will bat an eyelid, right? I wear sarongs.
Okay.
I come in with sarongs and flip-flops and, like, flower shirt, and everyone's like, yeah, it's fine. When I started my PhD, my mum was like, you have to buy a nice little black dress that you can wear at formal events.
You also need, like, probably, like, a little bit of a blazer bolero thing.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff.
Never used it. Not entirely true. Used it at a funeral.
Oh, okay. Got sad.
But, like, if you do wear, like, office, neat and tidy corporate wear, I think people would be like, what is up with you?
What's your angle?
Yeah, like this is not. You have to almost dress up a little bit quirky, I think, or very like relaxed.
Right.
So I think if I ever left academia and had to go into certainly a corporate job or something, I'm gonna be met with a bit of a culture shock with like people policing how I behave and what I say, because I can get away with being pretty darn obnoxious and cute in my current state.
I like that you use the word cute. Would others?
I don't know. No, it's very fortunate.
I want to know, have you two enjoyed hanging out this weekend? We've done a lot of things together. And this has been the time when we hang out, and we haven't gotten the chance to do that before. What's it been like getting together?
Sort of the same.
I feel, yeah. So when I first got here to Daniel's house, because Hedvig's only been here for like 3 days.
Yeah.
I remarked on the weirdness of the not weirdness, right? And I think I said this has happened to you before, Hedvig. It's probably happened to Daniel, but it's certainly never happened to me. I've never gotten to know someone to such a significant degree, right? Hedvig and I, if we were to tally it, it would be hundreds of hours of conversation at this point, right? Because we've been doing a show together for 5 years minimum, and each of those shows, given how we are, go for at a recording level 2.5 to 3 hours.
No,
each.
not
yes,
that long.
they do.
2 hours normally.
No.
Yeah.
And that's only when we've transitioned to pre-records that you've done, right? If we actually have a guest that we're involved in, good Lord, it balloons. So, right, literally hundreds of hours. And so I rock up here, having never physically in person met Hedvig before, and you know, it's a for lack of a better phrase, and this might be weird, a close friend that I happen to have never been in the same physical space as.
Yeah.
So it should be quite awkward and weird, and it just wasn't.
And it helps that, as I was saying, like, I've never seen this part of your body, but, like, it's just, like, medium white man. Like,
Lump of clay stuff again?
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Nondescript. I'm the golden retriever of human bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you mentioned before, Ben, all of your interactions between the two of you for years and years have pretty much been publicly available. Everybody's been able to listen to, if somebody listened to all of our shows, they would have heard the extent of your interaction.
Oh, that's a fascinating thing to think about, isn't it? There's some people who will feel like they know me as well as I know Hedvig, but it's a unidirectional flow instead of a bidirectional flow.
Yeah.
And now we've been able to have some private interaction.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Which is nice.
Which, I have to say, has in no way differentiated itself from our recorded interaction. There is not one aspect of our interactions that is in any way different from anything anyone's heard.
No, it's true. It is true. But, and we say that, like, that's the first minute, but I've only met Daniel one time before.
It was in Canberra.
Yeah.
True.
So it's actually not that different.
No.
In many ways.
Not really.
Was I the...
No, wait, I met you a couple of times. I stayed at your place once, and then there was a conference a few years before then. It was once in
Canberra as well?
2018, and then in 20... Yeah. Was that the
Not
same
many
visit?
times.
Am I conflating?
think
I could be
This is
conflating.
certainly what people have come to the podcast for, hearing you two go,
you can pull them out and make like a...
yeah,
mini
a
track.
compilation.
Well,
Anyway, not many times.
Not many
Let's
times.
just put it like that.
it's true. So it's been kind of the same.
But I think it's been good. I mean, I think we're also people who live a lot on the internet. And I have for a young age.
Yeah.
So a lot of my relationships, it is true, I have very few that I've never met in real life, but I have a lot of relationships that are
Predominantly online.
significantly mediated by the internet, and they are not any less real to me.
Yeah.
And I think now that millennials, like the first generation to be old at the internet, and Zoomers are getting into it, like you can as millennials and Zoomers, I think we can understand social cues and stuff through text and through like who is like liking which tweet and like what's going on. And it's like a lot of nuance. You can communicate a lot, actually.
I agree.
Yeah.
I certainly had the experience of having online only. I mean, I was a tragic nerd as a teenager, so there was plenty of friends that I had only online. I just never met them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I never ended up meeting them later.
Yeah, same.
I wonder what Starburst 86 is up to.
Yeah.
The show is a different experience for me because you show up and you sort of say stuff and then you're done.
We are lazy. There's just no other way to describe it. We just rock up.
I tried once. I think I've told this over the weekend, but like, because Daniel does the prep, the like the agenda, the plan. Sometimes I try and help with that.
Yep.
To more or less success.
Love that.
And
I do not ever.
he
help.
does not ever.
Never.
And then we record, and then we all send audio files to Daniel, and then he needs to mush them all together.
Yep.
And then cut out our ums and ahs, and when we say stupid things or
Weird digressions.
and things.
not
I
keeping
listen. I mean, so because I was present for the episode, I don't always listen to the full episode, but I do sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I sound smarter.
It all
Daniel's
comes
work is
together in
magic
the edit.
again.
Yeah.
It really comes together in the edit.
But it means that you listen to our voices
Like 3 times.
3 times.
Good
So
lord.
sometimes when I
I'm
talk down,
so
he's like,
sorry.
you'll be like, oh, that was like that time when you said that, and like I said that once.
Yeah.
Daniel heard it when I said it, and then listened to it a couple more times.
I hear it when you say it, I hear it when I edit, and then I hear it when I listen back to do transcript correction.
Yeah.
So I've seen all of
This
the work.
actually
Yeah.
throws into really sharp. I'd always thought you were sort of a mostly functional savant with the amount of recall ability you have over our shows. It's only just now occurred to me that that's because you have like 4 times more exposure to the show than we
It's
do.
true. It's
And
true.
every like stupid thing we say, he like remembers.
It's
And
crazy.
while the show's going on, while we're talking, I'm like, I'm not keeping this. I'm
Yeah, he does editing.
I'm editing
Yeah.
in real time.
Do you ever make notes? Do you ever actually... Yeah, right. So it's all mental flagging.
I crawl minute by minute through the show and think, oh, this was that bit where I was going to cut that out, or I was going to put that at the end.
What's the most
and-
common thing you cut?
Oh, that's a good question. What would you... Yeah, here's how I'll ask it.
Digressions that I don't think are interesting.
Okay. Damn. I was going to say, what do you want to say to Hedvig and like, if you could give us
yes.
one direction
Yes,
each,
yes.
what would it be?
We'll be
Nothing.
our good students.
Nothing. I don't want to do
No.
anything.
Come on.
There really isn't anything that I want to change about what you do.
Should we talk over each other less?
No, it doesn't matter because I can fix that.
Because we
I've got
record
you on
on...
separate tracks.
Yeah.
I've got you on separate tracks. It
No,
really.
I feel like we can take input.
I don't think... I
have none to
I
give
think he's
you.
being straight up.
I have none to give you because
I know.
I think that what you're doing
I'm
is
disappointed as
fantastic.
well.
I know, I'm sorry. And you know what? I don't want to tinker with it, but also there's really nothing that needs to change. This is not a problem because anything that comes up I can fix. But you know what? I do listen I listen to the show. I get the files and then it's like time to edit the show. And I go through and it feels like I'm spending time with you. And
I was like, sort of parasocial, but you're there?
kind of. But and I just think, and then I get to the end, and I just think, these guys are great, and I just don't want to.
I'm also confused.
I don't want to do anything besides this. This is what I think. I think this is the best job. I don't want to do anything besides just hanging out with these two. And that's luckily, very fortunately, I am in the privileged position of being able to do this full time, which people who have jobs can't do. So I feel like I want to take my good fortune and share that.
Okay. We need to have other people in our lives to like take our egos down.
Oh,
Does your partner do that?
Well, that'll happen.
I'm
happen.
I'm across that.
That'll
Don't
happen.
worry. I'm
Okay.
doing enough of that for myself. No worries at all.
Steve doesn't. He's like, oh.
Does he like love you and cherish you and
Yeah.
value? Oh my goodness. My partner does the same
Same.
thing, and because I'm a deeply damaged, broken person, I can't handle that at all.
Oh, his wedding vows were so sincere and nice, and mine had like a joke in it
Oh
about
no!
Brexit.
Oh dear! Yeah.
And he was
The
like,
failing is ours. Like,
And he was
do
like-
you understand that?
and I said like, oh, I read through our vows, and you were so sweet, and mine was like, a bit sort of trying to not be so sincere. And he was like, no, yours were great. I love them.
Even on this level, you're too supportive.
Yeah.
There's different ways to be, and we be them, and it works.
All right.
No, Daniel, incorrect. I need to change.
Let's
you-
express this brokenness. How long have you felt this way?
Oh no!
Did you also, when you were little, get told like you are a diamond in the rough? You can be so great if you just apply yourself.
No.
Oh, I was told that.
No, not at all. No, I had a largely pretty dysfunctional childhood, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Is the response that I feel obligated to give in any mention of such thing. But, like, it's a tough gig trying to be human. right? It's not. I don't find it particularly easy. Or more to the point, I found it really, really easy for a long time because I wasn't trying very hard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess.
Being a sort of meh person is really easy, right? Because you just like sort of barrel through existence, doing whatever inherent impulse comes to you, and then
living consciously.
Yeah, and I'm not. I want to be really, really clear here. I'm not saying I do that very well, but even trying on a really small level to try and start doing that sucks. It's really hard. It's not fun or easy or any of those sorts of things. But it's like, I don't know. I personally experience it as once you sort of are shown a little bit behind the curtain, you can never really ever forget that you've seen behind the curtain, and all of the magic kind of dies in that moment a little bit. That was my experience anyway. The illusion. Oh no! Have to put like buy you both a carton now. That was the rule back in the radio days. If someone's phone goes off in the studio, you got to buy everyone a carton of beer.
Oh.
Okay, we'll do that next time. So what time is it?
It is 10 o'clock exactly on the dot.
Oh, we're all good.
Wow.
Yeah, we're doing well.
Okay.
We're doing well.
We haven't waffled too much, I don't think.
No, I feel like we're coming to the end of something. I feel like we're tapering down. That's how it feels.
Yeah. Or we figure out how to get a second wind, but we can also taper it down.
I don't think this needs to be necessarily
Long.
like super self-indulgent,
No.
right? Like where we have 2 hours, so we fill 2 hours.
No.
We don't need to be a gas in a certain space.
That's right.
And fill that volume no matter what.
No.
What's the takeaway? Like if we were to excerpt a slice of this like video recording podcast to be the like landing video on a YouTube page or a pinned video on a TikTok or something, like
I think the reason we're talking so much about society and feelings and ourselves and our experiences is because language is connected to all of that. And I think a lot of linguistics sometimes fails to recognize that or ignores that out of a need to just do feasible research I do included. And I think it's a nice outlet actually for me, the show, to be able to talk about the societal impacts and things and like the multidisciplinary of linguistics, because it's not often something you can do in actual research. And the way we talk about other people and the way we treat other people are quite connected. I don't know. I think that's why we stumble into these things so often.
I agree. Yeah, I think that necessarily linguistics, and this is a complete outsider's perspective in the sense that like I have no formal linguistic education of any kind, is one of the most inextricable sort of disciplines from like just being alive. It's really hard to tease apart linguistics from being a human being who lives and experiences the world, right? Whereas for something like physics or chemistry, it's really easy to do that, right? Because those rules and those principles exist totally independent of human beings existing and being alive. Whereas linguistics, the study of linguistics could not exist without us.
Yeah, and that's why linguists are such a drag at parties as well, because language is going on all the time around us, and even if people are quiet, that is a communicative signal, and like in your head, you're doing things as well. So if you've ever been at a party with a linguist, probably what happened is someone says something, you're like, oh, can you say that in the past tense as well? Ooh. And you become a little zoo animal, and it's a bit awkward, and you have to tell them to stop. But it is because it's everywhere. There is also like, I experienced this when we did that interview with the translation service based in Israel. What were they called?
It was Blend.
Yes.
See what
They
I
were
mean?
very
See that
nice.
recall? 400 episodes deep, and he's like, oh, you mean blend.
Oh, I also said a falsehood in that one. I said the wrong etymology of Ukraine.
No.
Oh, darn.
Focus.
Anyway,
That's my job.
they asked us like questions. They asked us as linguists questions about what's going to happen with societal changes in the future. Like specifically about like, for example, gender inclusive language. And we're like, we study the words.
We're not futurists.
But like what you're asking us to do is something that maybe ask like a sociologist or an historian or an anthropologist. Like, I'm not sure sometimes, because it is true linguistics is linked to all these things, but the study of linguistics is not actually preparing you to study all of those things. always. And it's not, maybe that isn't even possible. And like when you make a study, so we try to focus on like, what are the words? And linguistics is coming more around to the fact that like communication is more than just words. There's like shared common knowledge, assumptions and hints and like...
Can we describe linguistics
no.
as a... No, as in, is it possible to like carbon date linguistics into epochs?
Yes.
Yeah. So like the first bit was when we were like, there are words and those words have rules and that is linguistics.
Yeah, so that's like...
Panini.
Yeah, Panini. One of the first ever grammars written was written in India a very, very long time ago on Sanskrit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like very influential. So some people call it like Paninian linguistics up until... Well, probably up until Bloom...
1700s.
Oh, okay.
Because
Oh,
it was
yeah.
Grimm,
Okay, yeah.
Jakob Grimm and
Okay.
Werner.
And then we get like, ooh, maybe they're language trees.
Okay.
And everyone gets...
Maybe languages are related to each other somehow.
Maybe languages are related.
Maybe we can figure out what they were like earlier.
And, as is always needed to point out, still very intertwined with like racist ideology.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
As nearly everything throughout the Enlightenment was.
Yeah. And I think there's this idea that people have that like racism was like a thing in like Nazi Germany.
They
It
invented
was.
yes.
And everywhere else massively. Like all of Europe was doing eugenics.
That's
like,
why it was appealing. That's why Nazism was appealing to so many people.
Yeah.
I believe it was sort of the 1400s. My extremely limited understanding of this is that starting from the 1400s onwards, a racial dimension to thinking was a relatively new aspect in the sense that there was always the other, right? So if you were, say, a European citizen, you would see yourself as, say, Christian, and then there would be everyone else. Or you would see yourself as Northern European, and then there would be everyone else.
Right.
But the idea that, like, being a sub-Saharan black African was a unique racial quality to those people kind of gets its start around the
Maybe,
1400s.
yeah.
More or less as a justification for chattel slavery.
And also, I think people are fascinated by biological evolutionary theory and wanted to use that in more... I don't know. But it definitely permeates into linguistics as well.
Of course.
So some of the terms like isolating and polysynthetic and stuff has part of its origins in some of that stuff about like primitive and better. And there's a lot of wording, even up into anthropology and linguistics into like the 60s. There's a lot of wording about like primitiveness and progression and stuff.
Rudimentary and...
Yeah, and like complex. It gets really icky. And I have this map that I always try to remind myself of, which is like the language families of the world, and they're all divided into the 3 races.
We put a link up to that photo. It's on our...
Yeah, it's good to just sit with and like look at and be like, okay, this is a thing. It was made in the 1920s and it was perfectly normal. It was taught to school children. It was perfectly normal. Anyway,
we had like then there was like Bloomfield and Jakobson.
Yeah.
And then Chomsky.
And
then Labov.
Yeah, like sociolinguistics. Yeah, I guess.
And is that where we are now?
That's where we are. I think that's where we are. Are we doing... I feel like we're doing a lot of language evolution stuff.
And it's not like they replace each other, right?
Yeah.
It's more like you get more spouts.
Yeah.
So like there's still Labovian and
it's like
Bloomfieldian.
vinyl and CDs and streaming.
Right.
It's like
You get all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's where we are now. I definitely think that linguistics has progressed to recognizing the social context of language more. It used to be more like a logic puzzle.
Yeah.
And now it's like, people use this to communicate and to signal identity and, yeah. And
So it was
also,
approached more like a physics back in the day,
I
right? Where
think
there are
so.
rules and systems that govern how this goes.
and
we
that are
just
like
analyse them.
independent, that you
Yeah.
can extract from the social situation and they have exactly the same meaning.
Right.
Which we don't think is true,
Yeah.
really. And so like when you have sentences that are like God and past sentences that are ambiguous, like when you read them on a piece of paper, you're like, oh, I don't know if this refers to that or that. Usually when you have them in a social context, there's no confusion.
Yeah, semantic ambiguity drops off significantly when
Yeah.
you've got like face-to-face communication.
Yeah, like I know Ben. I know roughly what he knows. I know that if I say these words, he's going to probably think like that.
So we have guesses about each other's knowledge and beliefs, desires, goals, and intentions, and then we use all of that information, even though we're just guessing a lot, to disambiguate the words that we hear.
We're good guessers.
And we're really good guessers.
We're good guessers.
It's really rare that we get it wrong, honestly. And when you get it wrong, sometimes you're like, oh, this person's inner mind is not the way I thought.
Yeah.
My rest of my conversation, I'm gonna
clarify.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna speak a bit different. Yeah. Sorry, you asked me a question and then I ranted off.
No, we got there.
Yeah, we got
Epochs
there.
of linguistics.
I think that's roughly.
Yeah, there we go.
But might be different. We'll continue evolving.
Well, yeah, that's certainly like if there's a button for like because language is a show to just sort of round out this really bizarre non-normal episode is that like if you wanted to know what because language is and is about and you wanted to just like jump in now, you can reliably anticipate that we're just going to be bringing you new, interesting, different things of a linguistic orientation, but certainly not exclusively about linguistics. And we're probably also going to try and make it fun and funny in the process.
Yeah, we try. Yeah.
We talk to interesting people who are doing good work.
Yeah. Speaking of, who are we talking to next?
Oh, that's a good question. We've got a number of shows lined up in the hopper, but the exact order is going to be...
Depending on availability and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that. There is one thing that I want to say, and that is that we made the jump from appearing on a community radio station to kind of going independent and being ourselves.
Podcast only.
And that's been amazing because, like, I was wondering, should we do it? Should we make the move? And, Grant Barrett from Away with Words, I was talking to him about this. And he said, do it. Jump. They'll catch you. They'll catch you. And they being the patrons, the people who have been with us since the Talk days. And they did. They've caught us, and they've been great contributors to the show. That's actually one huge difference is the media landscape. Like, we used to be about, Facebook for a long time. And I didn't even have Twitter. Didn't even have a Twitter account. And then I got that grudgingly. And Twitter is now the way that we do it, mostly. And I despise Facebook. I don't want to do Facebook. I don't want to make Facebook. I mean, there's things that Facebook is very good for. There are good things about Facebook. I don't like it anymore, and please do something different. But we get most of our engagement from Discord. Our Discord patrons are amazing. They give us so much good stuff, and we've managed to create this fun, perking environment. And you folks show up,
I really like Discord, but they are so active, I actually struggle to keep up.
It's a bit intimidating, yeah.
Just jump in.
This is
I
also...
try.
This is something that I noticed, certainly when I was my nerdy teenage self, is that, like, webcomics that I enjoyed or TV show forums or whatever it happened to be, they would often have community message boards and that sort of thing, which operate nearly completely independently of the source material, right? Like, I remember I lurked on a couple of webcomic message boards, and it very quickly just transitions into its own little social space. And yeah, there might be a subforum about like the comic of the week, but that is often one of the least trafficked parts of the actual community. And everyone else is just hanging out and chilling and a collection of like-minded individuals hanging out. Like, one of the more sort of populous channels of our Discord is just photos of people's pets.
Oh, I came up with the one with your cat.
Yeah. My cat is so good.
I met his cat. It's a good cat.
She is a total sweetheart.
Lovely cat.
Very cute and small.
Well, I just wanted to say a big thanks to our patrons for supporting us, for helping us do this. And we appreciate you, and we hope that you're enjoying what you're getting.
You, the real MVP in this situation. For sure.
Yeah, and it's fun to be on Patreon. I support other shows on Patreon as well. And as someone who for years and years and years and years listened to a lot of podcasts and never went on Patreon,
yeah, 100%.
I was like, is this going to be very difficult? It's not very difficult.
That's 2 cartons.
Oh,
That's
no.
2 cartons.
Sorry.
It's not very difficult. It's very easy. You can go support us or any other show you like fairly pain-free. Yeah. Yeah, it's easier than I thought. And I get little emails like, ooh, I got a Patreon goodie. And I'm like, ooh. But some of the time I'm just like happy that I am helping people do their thing. And that's the most fun bit.
Well, this is my thing. I know you both have other things. I got other things too, but I'm glad that we come together and do this thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad that life has moved in such a way that allows you more free time.
Yeah.
Because I used to feel a lot more guilty about contributing nothing at all.
Did you?
And now I feel slightly less guilty about contributing nothing at all.
If I needed more from you, I would have told you.
I don't believe you.
I'm not sure I believe you.
I don't believe you
all
at all.
There was a time when you were absent from a lot of episodes when you were taking a sabbatical, but that was just because there was stuff going on for you, and
Yes.
it worked.
Life being crummy. An excellent excuse not to do things.
I think that it is really good when you have a social sphere where you can say things like that directly.
That is true.
When I was at the end of my PhD, I told you guys, like,
I'm gonna
bail a lot.
I can't be here. And there were just lots of Ben and Daniel shows. And that was fine.
And as
the angels wept.
no, but like as I manage other projects, and sometimes people feel bad saying when they can't do things, and that actually makes your life as a project coordinator worse.
Yes.
Even worse than if they just like the fact that they don't show is one thing, but if you don't know, and I always feel comfortable telling you guys. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
true.
good. It feels good. Okay, we should definitely wrap up.
Yes.
Thank you, patrons, and thank you for being here. First of all, in this
Yes,
space.
this has been tremendous.
Yeah. And then sit here.
Oh, what are we doing? Okay.
We are all waving, and then we can get a gift.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Very good. Movement is good.
All right. Thank you. This
Now
has
we can
been
be
fun.
real millennials and make a boomerang.
Now we do the reads.
Oh, I will.
Now we do the reads. I don't have reads.
Oh.
Okay, I can do this.
What?
Oh, are you going to try and remember
Yeah.
patron names from top
No, I'm
of
not going to
Not
do the
patron
patron
names,
names. Okay, so
I'll have them going up the screen.
if you enjoyed this episode of Talk the Talk, this very non-standard episode of Talk the Talk, there are
Of
a
what?
bunch of ways. Classic. Has to happen like once an episode. It was how many years? Like 8 years.
It was
Yeah.
The muscle memory is really strong.
Wait, so he's got 3 things in Talk the Talk jar and 2 cartons of
two
beer.
cartons.
Okay. If you have enjoyed this very non-standard episode of Because Language, there are heaps of different ways you can help support us, ranging from requiring basically no effort whatsoever. That includes things like going and leaving a review, or like telling a mate who might say to you, hey, do you have any good podcasts to listen to? Yeah, absolutely. You should listen to our podcast. This podcast is about linguistics. It's really fun and interesting. I really like it. If you don't think that, just lie and say that you do. You can leave a review in lots of different places, but generally, unfortunately, Apple Podcasts is the place where that does the best work. You can also, if you were so inclined, become a patron and throw as much or as little money our way as you like. It allows us to do all sorts of really important things. Most notably, and where most of our money goes, is towards transcribing the show, so it makes it searchable for people, and so that people who might not be able to hear can still engage in our podcast material about linguistics as well.
And we can pay guests.
Also that.
Yep.
Oh, and if you want to get in touch with us, like you want to say, hey, you can do it in all of the ways.
Tell us, Hedvig.
Oh no, okay. So Twitter, because Langpod. Facebook, because language.
Because Langpod. We're Langpod.
Oh, because Langpod everywhere. Hello at becauselanguage.com if you like a good old-fashioned email.
That's pretty
That's
much
it. That's it.
We have a few thank yous. Dustin from Sandman Stories,
Yes.
who always recommends us. The team at Speech Docs, our sponsors, the Oxford English Dictionary. How about that? Thanks to, of course, our patrons who are massive and help us tons.
And we met some of them this weekend. It was very fun.
Yeah, we had to get together.
That was lovely.
Lovely.
The music you're listening to is by Drew Kroplianov, who is a member of Ryan Bino and of Didian's Bible. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. Because language.
Pew, 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 pew. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. There we go. Okay, do I look silly with this?
I think that you should just look how you are. And how you are is wonderful.
Okay. I'm just staying warm.
I really regret/resent that Crocs are so aesthetically unpleasing, because on so many other
I think
fronts.
it's flipped.
Look, I know it has for like cool young Gen Zers, but I'm not that thing, right? Like I'm just a tragic.
You can be a cool Gen if you want. It's what I've been trying to tell you for so long. If you just really want to,
I don't
it
want to
will
be
happen.
mutton dressed as lamb. I need to age gracefully.
There's an expression.
I don't.
Yeah, it's like, nope, no grace to the aging. I will cling on with bloody ragged fingernails.
Only culturally though.
Every time I've ever had to record outside for any reason in Australia, the bird song comes through really, really clearly in the
Yeah.
recording. So people are going to
Which is really
hear
nice.
lovely native birds like twarbling in the background.
We hope that you enjoy what's going on here.